Hello and welcome to the F1 Time Portal, a Formula One history podcast started by two Formula One tragics. I'm your tragic host, Rosa.
And I'm your Monster Mash host, Luigi. And today we're taking you back to the remainder of the very tight 1962 season. So let's go.
I like the Monster Mash.
It's not really related to motor racing, isn't it? Other than it starts with M.
Yeah.
That could be my theme. That could be that's how I can get away with it, because it's really hard to find motor racing theme songs from 1962.
Yeah. I'll be interested to see what you choose for 1963, Luigi. And so will our listeners, I'm betting.
Yeah, I'll try.
Okay.
I'll see. I'll have to have a new theme each time because I can't do the music ones anymore. They're getting hard. Yeah. So we've got a pretty awesome championship on our hands here. Like, just a quick reminder to the rest of you. The end of part 2, we had a really tight championship. Graham Hill's leading in the BRM on 19, Clark in the Lotus on 18, Bruce McLaren in the Cooper on 16, and Phil Hill, who's been on 14 since about race 3, and even John Surtees in the Lolas on 13. So only 6 points between first and fifth.
Yeah.
So very exciting. So we're up to race 7, and I'm just trying to get my position because I had to look at that championship rankings. I lost my position in the document, and now I'm trying to find myself back.
Back to your notes.
Nearly there. I'm back to my notes. Okay. So we're up to the 7th race of the season, the Italian Grand Prix. It's on September 16, Monza. It's 86 laps. There are 21 drivers in the race. There are 9 non-starters, so there's obviously pre-qualifying going on here. And it's a 2x2x2 grid formation. So the organisers of this race determined that only 22 cars would be allowed to start, on the proviso that they would record their time within 10% of the second fastest practice time. And the organisers also decided to abandon the concrete banked track in favour of the standard 5.75 5-kilometre road circuit only.
Oh, thank goodness for that. That banking was really dangerous, wasn't it?
Oh, it was
caused a
causing
lot of problems.
Deaths and significant accidents.
Yeah.
I'm glad they did this.
Yeah. And, this is the second time Monza has the 10% rule in place, which we talked about last season. So, good on them. I like Monza organisers sometimes. They're quite innovative.
Yeah, okay. And it's also a good race. I've always enjoyed this race.
Yeah.
It's been the race of the season historically for me and Britain. Oh, the British Grand Prix has been hot and cold, boring or interesting.
Yeah.
Whereas Monza always gives you surprises.
Yeah. So Brabham's not here this race. I think it says that they chose to skip this race. I'm not sure why. Maybe they needed to tweak the car after that retirement in Germany.
Yeah.
I don't think they did very well, but they're missing.
Interesting. And you know what? He knew he wasn't in the running for any championships. He wanted to get the car right.
Yeah.
So not a bad strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So qualifying itself was a very tight affair, with Clark taking pole by just 0.03 seconds ahead of Graham Hill in the BRM, Ginther in the BRM, and McLaren Cooper were 3rd and 4th. So Ginther was 3rd and McLaren was 4th.
Yeah.
Yeah. So while Clark had a good start, so we're in the race now, Graham Hill took the lead and was leading the first lap, followed by Clark, Ginther, and Surtees up from 8th place. Then there was McLaren and the rest.
That's a great start by Surtees in the Lola.
Yeah, he's becoming your favourite, isn't he?
Is.
Just because of the word Lola, really?
No, I also do like Surtees. He's good.
Yeah.
He's a champion.
No, he's not. Not yet.
Well, he's a motorcycle champion.
Oh, yeah, right. Yes, motorcycle champion.
Made the transition to 4 wheels. That's pretty impressive.
And he's winning, and he's won races.
He's always up there. Yeah.
So Clark had gearbox issues on lap 2, which had plagued him through qualifying. So this left Graham Hill out on his own in the lead, with Ginther in the BRM and Surtees in the Lola battling for second place. Further back, as was the nature of Monza, there were groups of cars almost touching and having very tight racing duels throughout the field.
Slipstreaming again, Luigi.
Yeah. It's exciting to watch that.
It is. Slipstreaming is exciting. I think even if you're not in the lead, it's just exciting to watch cars that close together.
Yeah, because it's not like they're formation practice driving and they've done this. They're doing it for position.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. unplanned, unplanned driving, unplanned formation driving.
Yeah.
Yeah. So by lap 25 of 86, Graham Hill was leading by 15 seconds. That's pretty impressive. But the battles behind him continued ferociously, with Ginther and Surtees passing and repassing one another, with both of these drivers over 20 seconds ahead of McLaren and Gurney in 4th and 5th, who were also battling in a similar fashion. At about this time, the Lolas retired. So that included Surtees for you, Rosa. Yeah. This meant that Graham Hill was now well clear in front of Ginther. The focus now turned to the ferocious battle between McLaren, Gurney and Mags, and just behind them, Bonnier in the Porsche was surrounded by the 3 Ferraris of Phil Hill, Bandini and Baghetti.
Wow. I think if I could go back in time using the F1 time portal, this is a race I would definitely want to watch live.
Yeah.
But I think I've said that maybe 12 times.
I know.
Since every race, every season, there's a race that I wanted to watch live.
Yeah, and Monza's always going to be in that list, isn't
for sure.
Yeah. So the battle for third reduced to a 3-car affair due to various retirements and spins. So we had Gurney in the Porsche, Marisi in the Ferrari, and McLaren in the Cooper fighting it out from lap 59. And remember, this is an 86-lap race. So by lap 66, this battle now dropped to 2, as Gurney had a car issue with his Porsche. So at race end, we had BRM winning, or Graham Hill and the BRM winning by over 30 seconds from Ginther in the BRM second, and McLaren in the Cooper snatches third by just 0.4 of a second from Marisi in the Ferrari. Now this was a Ferrari home track, remember?
Yeah,
he would have been desperate to get on that podium.
Yes,
yeah.
And also Mauricio, like he would have been a third driver, or even 4th after Baghetti.
Yeah.
But BRM gets an impressive 1-2 finish at the Ferrari home track in Italy. That's pretty impressive. Onto the Drivers' Championship standings. We do have to take a little step backwards here because we misread the standings at the end of the last race.
It's my fault, everyone, just so you know. But Rosa's going to take the fall for it. So go, Rosa. Explain how you stuffed up.
I stuffed up by giving you the responsibility of dropping in the championship standings at the end of every race. Anywho, it doesn't matter. Our listeners are very forgiving and tolerant of human beings making mistakes, or as I'd like to call them, brain fades. So at the end of this race, we've got Graham Hill on 36, Bruce McLaren on 22, Jim Clark on 21 and Surtees on 19. And, as we said, Phil Hill hasn't got any points since the third race of the season, so he's stuck on 14.
I was accurate there.
Yeah, you were. Yeah. And on the constructors' side, we have BRM on 37, Lotus on 27, Cooper Climax on 25, Lola Climax on 19 and Ferrari on 18. Yeah, they're slipping further and further. But that makes more sense because, they haven't done anything in such a long time. They're slipping further and further back. Yeah. So apologies about that, everyone, but all good. We're back on track.
I'm sure the error that we made at the end of the part 2 of 62, we've corrected it at the beginning of 62 part 3, but that's not going to be forgiven. There's going to be lots of complaints in the generally 1 week between episodes. Anyway, that's life.
I'm handing over those emails to you, Luigi. You can answer those.
Okay, so we're up to the 8th race of the season, the second to last race of the season, the United States Grand Prix. It's at Watkins Glen on the 7th of October. It's a 100-lap race with 18 drivers attending and 3 non-starters, and the grid formation is a 2x2x2. So, Ferrari were absent from this race because I pretty much think they couldn't be bothered. It wasn't worth their trouble.
Yes.
It just wasn't worth it anymore. And as we know, Enzo doesn't seem to need sales of his Ferrari sports cars in the United States.
Ferrari's just in turmoil, in and out, not there. They've gone from dominating 1961 to nowhere, like in the wilderness in 1962.
Yeah.
That is so bad.
They started the year okay though.
Yeah, they did.
But they just not competitive.
No.
Yeah.
And I think I also heard in this at this race, in what was a very, very poor communication blunder, Phil Hill learns from a reliable source who was at the track, because he wasn't there, that he had been fired by Ferrari.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Enzo was trying to find a fall guy.
Yep. And it was Phil. Poor Phil. Not lucky
Phil.
Phil.
The defending world champion.
Yeah. Yep.
Makes you wonder, right?
Well, it does. It's sort of not surprising. I mean, Enzo was ruthless.
Okay. Brabham was back though with a new car for their only driver, Brabham.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
so
good.
Saturday practice was wet. Practice on Friday was set the grid times. So while the BRMs were setting a good speed, it was Clark in the Lotus who took pole position with a 1 minute 15.8, followed by Ginther, BRM, and Graham Hill in the BRM. Jack Brabham in his new car qualified an impressive 5th. Not as impressive as that pole position by the Lola. But this is different. This is a car designed and built by Jack Brabham.
Yep.
Using the Climax engine. Surtees, who set a good enough time for 9th, actually started on the back of the grid as he took over his teammate's car due to an accident in qualifying.
That sounds familiar, Luigi. Remember, we were at the 24 Grand Prix, as we've said, and it was...
The Australian Grand Prix.
Yeah, the Australian Grand Prix. And it was really shocking to people that Sargent gave up his car to Albon, who Albon crashed in one of the practice sessions, and so Sargent had to give up his car to him. But we weren't that surprised because we'd seen it happen through the 60s and even earlier. Like, at least he didn't have to give up his car during the race, like in the 50s.
Yeah, to us it was like, normal.
Yeah, that's normal.
Some people were quite emotional. How could they do that? How could they do that?
Yeah.
And we're like, this is like the 100,000th time it's happened.
I mean, it has been a long time between it happening, like the 50s and 60s. Like, what's that, like 70 years, 75 years. But still, it does happen.
Yeah, true. So at race start, Clark launched into the lead in his Lotus, with Graham Hill and the BRM taking second place from his teammate. And at the start of the second lap, Clark and Hill were breaking away from Ginther in the BRM, who had Brabham in the Brabham, Gurney and McLaren breathing down his neck. By lap 10, Clark and Hill were 5 seconds clear of second group, who in turn had a 20-second advantage over the rest. And of note was Surtees was already up to 8th place despite starting on the back row.
That is awesome by Surtees. He must be really annoyed that he wasn't allowed to start where he had actually qualified.
Yeah, it seems a bit silly because it's the same car. It's his teammate's car.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
So lap 12 is where Graham Hill actually outwitted Clark to take the lead, and he did this while they were lapping a back marker. And it's at this point that I'd like to say that many people say Clark was the awesomely talented driver and that Graham Hill was the hard-working driver. But this season, to me, showed that Graham Hill had natural speed and great racecraft, because if he can keep up with, and on occasion past Jim Clark, he is a worthy driver to be respected as one of the greats, and just felt this was worth mentioning at this point in time.
Yeah, I think it is interesting that you say this because we've had conversations outside of this podcast about Graham Hill's career and not really thinking a great deal about it. Like, he didn't really set the Formula One, grid on fire when he debuted, and it took him a long time to get to where he is. But look, I'm the same. I think learning about this season, I'm really gaining a great deal of respect for him.
Yeah. And I think that's what this podcast's purpose is, to bring to light these amazingly talented drivers that maybe they didn't set the record books alight.
Yeah.
But they got championships.
Yeah.
We're giving something away a little bit. But So having said all these complimentary things about Graham Hill, Clark retook the lead on lap 19. and then he started to draw away from everyone, including the hard-working Graham Hill. So Ginther retired from third on lap 35. So Gurney moved up to third place in his Porsche, but he was passed by McLaren and Brabham later in the race. Clark went on to win the race by 9.2 seconds from Graham Hill.
Yikes.
Then a lap later, McLaren finished third, followed by Brabham in the Brabham. So while this race was not exciting towards the end, it did set up a showdown for the championship between Jim Clark and Graham Hill for the finale in South Africa. And I'm sure Rosa has cross-checked that the championship ratings are
this
accurate.
isn't just a manufactured close championship by Luigi. This is an actual close championship decider. But yeah, these are exciting, these championship deciders. I think not only for this podcast and knowing what happens in this season, but it also means that, in our TP championship, we can right the wrongs if they happen.
Yeah.
So
if we feel so inclined.
That's right. So the Drivers' Championship standings then are Graham Hill on 39 and Jim Clark on 30, with Bruce McLaren in third on 24. And just a shout out to John Surtees on 19 in that Lola. Then we've got on the constructors' side the BRM on 39, the Lotus on 36, Cooper Climax on 27, and Lola Climax on 19. And interestingly, Ferrari has dropped out of the top 5.
Yeah. And let's give a tip of the hat to BRM. We're going into the final race of the season. They're leading the constructors. They're leading the Drivers' Championship. And remember good old 1950 when they just turned up at the British Grand Prix?
Just
after qualifying.
On race day. They turned up on race day and just lined up at the back of the grid. They were allowed to start
on the back of the grid. And here they are. Look how long it takes for success to come about. It only took 12 years.
Yes. Aston Martin. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we're up to the final race. You'd have to say, with Graham Hill having a 9-point lead, he's got 1.5 hands on that trophy.
Yeah.
I mean, he needs to score 0 and Clark needs to win.
Yep.
So let's see what happens. So December 29. So this is where New Year's Eve happened for everyone, I think. Race was at Kyalami. 82 laps, 17 drivers attending, and a 2x2x2 grid formation. So unfortunately, though, before we start this race, we have some bad news to report. So on the 1st of November in 1962, that young driver Ricardo Rodriguez, who we mentioned a few times, unfortunately he died in a fiery accident while practicing for the non-championship Mexican Grand Prix. He was only 20 years of age, and for a career spanning only 6 races, 5 starts, he actually achieved a great deal. So maybe, Rosa, do you want to take turns in giving him some credit for some of his achievements?
Yeah, sure. He was the first Mexican driver to ever drive in a Formula One race.
And he was the youngest driver for Ferrari right up until the 2024 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, where he was surpassed by Oliver Bearman, who was only just filling in for an appendix-operated Carlos Sainz. So that record went to 2024.
Yeah, he was also the youngest F1 starter until the 1980 Canadian Grand Prix.
He was the youngest driver to get points in an F1 race, only beaten in 2000 at the Brazilian Grand Prix by someone you love, Rosa.
Jenson Button.
Yeah.
Who beat him in 1980? Was that, would that have been Alonso? No.
No, Alonso. I don't know. I know you're not joking, but that would be a funny joke.
Who was that in 1980?
I actually don't know. We need to look it up. Yeah.
Okay. And he was also, unfortunately, the youngest driver to die in Formula One.
Yeah. So for just 6 races, he really made a mark and inspired many other Mexican drivers, notably his older brother Pedro. And I'm not sure at the Mexican Grand Prix I think they've named the track Rodriguez. But I'm not sure if it's after Pedro or Ricardo.
Hey.
We'll find that out later.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but for 6 races, it was he made a mark.
Yeah, he did.
And if he didn't pass, I think he had potential.
He had a bright future, I think.
He had a very bright future. I think we would have been talking about him for many more years. So at 20, extremely young, right?
Okay, yeah. Well, we're at South Africa, Luigi. There's a bit of a history of the South African Grand Prix, and it goes back to 1934. It was held as a handicap race back then, which which is a different type of race than a standard Formula One race, isn't it? Like cars are given times that they start behind and have to make up during the race is what I suggest it would be. So 21 years later, it was revived as a Formula Libre event in 1960. So I'm guessing that's another Formula car race. And for 1962, took championship status.
That's a pretty big achievement from a long way back, having a long history.
Yeah.
Neither Porsche or Ferrari chose to enter.
Well, hopefully Enzo has his engineers back at the factory developing a new car for 1963 that can challenge the Brits. I hope they're working round the clock, no breaks, no food, just work.
I wonder what Enzo's wife is doing. Like, is she still in charge?
I don't know.
I'm sure she still is. If he sacked the other people, surely she's still in charge.
Surely.
And the new people come in knowing she's in charge and they know what happened to the last group.
Yes.
Yeah. So we've got a championship to decide here. So let's talk about who does turn up, right?
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah. So when practice started, it was clear that Graham Hill and Clark were in a race of their own, and these two were over a second ahead of everyone else, with Clark getting pole with a time of 1 minute 29.3, followed by Graham Hill 1:29.6, and then Brabham was third, so he was right up there, 1 minute 31. So it just showed how gapped Clark and Hill were over the rest.
Even Brabham, who was a world champion, but I guess he's in the Brabham. And by the way, are you going to say Brabham every time now?
You know, I think, why not? He did it. He achieved it. And he's driving his own car in his own name. So why should we treat him any differently to anyone else?
You know that it's going to happen again doesn't it happen again with McLaren?
Well, he deserves it too.
Okay.
And just a little sneak preview. Surtees. At least Graham Hill, when he created his own team, he called it Embassy.
Okay, so very clever. Very, very
clever.
He
had professionalism in mind,
that's
perhaps.
Right. Yeah.
He had sympathy for us.
Yeah. And he didn't have a giant ego.
No. So we have two championship contenders on the front row, and there was huge excitement leading into this race.
Okay, so we know that you're obsessed with drivers that make good starts because you keep giving them massive points in your TP. So how are you going to handle this?
Well, let's see if someone does a good start.
Okay.
That's the first thing, right? So for those of you that don't know, though, a TP championship, and if you haven't already seen them, they're floating around with the other episodes, is a championship where we give top rankings for the top three whatever for each race. Most of the time it's the drivers, but sometimes it can be a team manager, sometimes it can be a circuit, sometimes it can be Mike Lang, the author, and we determine who is the moral world champion of the season. I call it the real world champion. Rosa calls it the people's champion.
Yeah, the people's champion.
But we can say it's not giving something away, is it? So for the 1956 season, for example, the championship was won by Fangio, as was the case in real world.
I think you will give it away, Luigi. In the TPs, something else happens.
Yeah, okay, something else happens. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, we take lots of things into account. You know, perhaps a driver is like leading for most of the race and then something happens that's not their fault or outside of their control, and we just want to give them the win because that's what they deserved, even if they didn't finish the actual race. Correct.
So it's all for fun, and it makes for very interesting discussion and disagreements mostly.
Yes.
And we've posted a few of these episodes for 1950 and for the 50 season. And we're probably going to put it behind the Patreon wall for the 60s, but let's see. Let's see how much people love it and if they help us maybe earn enough money to cover the editing costs of this podcast.
Yeah, especially when we want songs inserted for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah, Lola songs.
Yeah. But it is only a very small monthly fee. So if you do enjoy the podcast, it would really help us if if we can just sort of fund the costs of it getting out there.
Okay, so we've done the hard sell, so let's go back to the championship decider. We should do this every championship decider because that's when everyone is on the edge listening, and that's when we hit them with we didn't actually plan to do the an ad.
No.
But let's do it next time there's a championship decider. Let's do it.
I don't know. You'll have to talk me into it, Luigi.
I'm gonna purposely wait for a most cliffhanger moment, and that's when I start talking about it. So with the race start, Clark launched into the lead as Hill developed wheel spin. He was still in second place at the end of the opening lap, though, followed by Mags in the Cooper, who jumped up to third from sixth on the grid, followed by Surtees in the Lola, McLaren in the Cooper, Ginther in the BRM, and Brabham had a poor start and was down in eighth place.
Oh.
I purposely had to bring him up just so I could say it.
Brabham.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like broom, doesn't it?
It does too.
So Clark was in devastating form. And on the third lap, he set the fastest lap of the race, which would not be bettered, and Hill simply couldn't keep up. Graham Hill couldn't keep up. And that's pretty impressive. That's with heavier fuel as well. So behind Graham Hill, there was a huge scrap for third place involving Mags, Surtees and McLaren. By lap 20, Clark had built up a 13-second lead over Hill, who himself had a similar lead over Mags.
Clark is really making a statement here. I think him and his Lotus are now in tune, and they have arrived on the scene. And
Clark, dominating the way he is so hoping that Hill retires, because that would give him the championship.
Yeah, it would. Yeah.
So the battle for third continued to rage, however, with Surtees. Surtees had stopped at the pits with noise coming from his engine. Not sure what that means, but it was obviously enough of a concern. This allowed McLaren to ease off as his teammate, Mags, also in the Cooper, was a further 3 seconds back, followed by Brabham a further 15 seconds back. At half distance, Clark's lead was nearly 30 seconds. By lap 57, and don't forget this is an 82-lap race, Clark's Lotus started to show puffs of blue smoke.
Oh, no.
Oh, well. Within 2 laps, Clark was forced into the pits with sagging oil pressure, and his race and championship hopes were over.
Oh, he was really deserving of this win. And ultimately, I mean, I know Graham Hill has done really well, but for him to win this race and the championship would have just been amazing. Well,
let's see. Let's see if the TP gives it to Clark instead of Hill. Because
You'll get it
I don't know.
You'll get it one way or another.
I'm predicting Hill's still going to win it, even with
so.
the TP factor. Clark would probably be given this win, but let's face it, Hill is probably going to...
He's dominating. He is.
He's had a really good season.
Yeah.
So the championship was now Hill's, no matter what, and he went on to record his 4th win of the season. So even if we put Hill second, Clark was still going to be second in the championship. So McLaren and Mags in the Coopers finished second and third, only 0.5 seconds behind. So they were pretty tight. And Brabham in the Brabham came home in 4th.
Hey, well, that was a pretty reasonable championship fight race, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you never know. Hill could have retired and Clark could have won.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, in the end, that's not what happened. And Graham Hill won the race. No, he didn't win the race. He came in...
No, he won the race.
Oh, he did win the race. He did.
Yeah, he inherited the win.
He inherited it, yes. And so he also takes out the championship with 42 points. Jim Clark on 30, Bruce McLaren on 27.
And I just wanted to mention, I think it's worth saying that Graham Hill, why he got 42 points and Clark got 30, Hill actually scored 52, but because of the rule of the best 6 results, so he actually really got 52 points. So quite a lot more than Clark.
That's huge. Yeah. And on the constructors, we have BRM in first place on 42, Lotus in second place on 36, Cooper in third place on 29, and I'm gonna say fourth because it's the Lola on 19.
Of course.
But what I am going to do is I just want to have a look exactly where Ferrari finished in the constructors' standings.
I can tell you they came 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They came 6th with 18 points, same number of points as Porsche.
They came 6 out of how many constructors?
8.
Oh.
and one of them was Brabham, which only made its debut towards the very end.
Wow.
And the last one was Lotus BRM, which was that car that...
the weird one. The
he
weird-
managed to get a point. He got a point.
Yeah, that's the weird one that Brabham drove, wasn't it?
No, but the person who got the point for it was, I think it was Maston Gregory.
Okay.
So he's had a fall from grace. Wasn't he in the Ferrari last year?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
But that's 6 out of 8 for Ferrari. Wow.
Yeah, not very good.
No. Okay. Well, that's 1962.
Yeah, so in closing, what a great battle of a season. Especially when I got the championship standings wrong before the Italian Grand Prix. I made it really close, right? Graham Hill did a great job in scoring points in 8 out of the 9 races and won 4, of which he won 3 of the last 4 races. Yes, we know that last race was a bit lucky, but still pretty strong. And while it seemed that Clark would take the championship in that last race in South Africa, I really do believe Graham Hill did deserve this championship, and well done to him. And I'm pretty confident he'll win it in the TP, but let's see. And yes, Clark was let down by that unreliable Lotus.
Yes, well, it was very revolutionary, so I think they had to iron out a few bugs out of it. But I think, as we said during the race, I did find newfound respect for Graham Hill, especially, like, I started reading a lot about how he started in motor racing, and I learned that his career was really based on gritty determination. Like, apparently he started it, he was a champion rower. And apparently, you know, his very iconic helmet, the blue helmet with the 4 black stripes, were actually a shout out to his rowing team. And he didn't get his driver's license until well into his 20s. Like, I think he was 24. And he that's huge, right? Like, we've got Rodriguez driving at 20, and Graham Hill, who's now a world champion, didn't even get his license until he was 24.
Wow.
And then, and he actually signed up. There was a package of driving lessons that were being offered at Brands Hatch for like £1. And he signed up for lessons there, and he got hooked, and he wanted to have more racing time at the track. So he became an instructor and a mechanic and worked for all these like sports car teams and other F2 teams. And eventually, as I said before, he talked himself into a drive at BRM. At Lotus, I think.
Yeah. Pretty impressive, isn't it? Like, he really, and I mean, he's only just starting to hit the straps, winning his first championship.
Yes.
An amazing driving. And that helmet design is also the helmet design his son adopted.
There you go.
Damon Hill.
So
as well.
Not many drivers back then had specific personalised helmet designs.
Yeah.
They come in a lot more in vogue later in the championship. But, he was one of them. And, he was just known – he was a bit of a nerd, Luigi. He was really known for his race preparation. He kept records of all the settings on his car, and he worked long hours with his mechanics. So really part of the team, and, I like him. I
wonder if he was a little bit OCD, just the way you write it, keeping records.
Yeah.
Everything was paper and pen and stopwatches.
It must have been.
Yeah, but still, if it drove him to success, who cares?
Oh, it did.
You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I was impressed. I'm impressed.
Yeah. I'm glad you've got a better view of him than maybe what you may have recalled.
Yes.
So we'll see what 1963 brings now. Will Ferrari come back from this sluggish 62 after sacking their leadership team?
Well,
we'll see.
That's what I want to see, Luigi.
Yeah, we will see. And I'm not going to do any spoilers or anything.
No, okay.
And I'll make a really good effort to get the championship rankings right next time.
No, I think I'll just do them myself next time.
Okay. Okay, we'll see you, everyone, for the next episode as we head into the very exciting 1963 season.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
We have a Patreon.
Yay, we're a professional podcast now. So it means a lot to us if you are able to support the F1 Time Portal podcast.
For a small monthly fee, you not only get ad-free podcast content, you will also receive special episodes that are exclusively uploaded for our Patreon financial supporters.
We promise at least 2 additional exclusive episodes each month aligned to the decade we are up to in the show.
And you will also be able to make suggestions about any special episodes you may want us to research and present. We can't promise that we can do all of them, but we will consider them.
So, if that sounds like an entertainment bargain to you, Go and sign up at patreon.com/F1timeportal today.
If you're enjoying our podcast, please tell your friends and non-F1 friends alike.
Yeah, and don't forget to rate us 5 stars or whatever highest is available on the podcast platform that you use.
We have a range of social media handles for you to connect with fellow listeners, so look up F1 Time Portal on all the usual platforms.
Or visit us at www.f1timeportal.com or email us at f1timeportal@gmail.com.
We would like to give credit to our primary reference materials, a series of books called Grand Prix by Mike Lang.
We also use many other written and digital references, which are in our show notes.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you.